While thinking about the next Final Fantasy game I'm going to make a walkthrough for, I was faced with a conundrum. Do I play Final Fantasy II on the Super Nintendo next? Which is really Final Fantasy IV. That was my second Final Fantasy, and the one that made me fall in love with the franchise. Or should I play Final Fantasy II on the NES, the true Final Fantasy II? The earliest version of that game that I beat was Final Fantasy Origins on the PlayStation. Should it be the title that brings the PS1 to my YouTube channel? And then I started thinking crazy. If I want to give the truly authentic experience of Final Fantasy II, what if I get a Famicom and play the original game that way? But do I need to get one of those converters too? I'm not sure if Japan uses the same voltage in residences as they do in America. How else do I play the original Final Fantasy II? Then I stumbled on a YouTube video that piqued my interest. It was about a Famicom game adapter built into some NES games. That's it, I thought. I bet I have a few of these in my entire catalog of games. But I quickly found out the truth. These adapters are not present in all NES games. In fact, relatively few. But thanks to a few online collectors' websites and Nintendo, I found out what games have a chance of having the adapter in them. Of this entire catalog, I only own 2, Excitebike and Wrecking Crew. However, there is another identifier to look for. The games that contain the adapter are 5-screw copies, so that eliminates my copy of Excitebike. You can tell the 5 screws by the shoulders as well. The top shoulders of the cartridges are smooth when there's 5 screws, but there are tabs with the cartridges that have 3. So I opened my copy of Wrecking Crew and did not find an adapter. One more thing to look for in these games is their weight. The ones with the adapter are heavier, 4.5 ounces, whereas the games that do not have it are 3.5 to 4 ounces. So, just to be sure, I grabbed my wife's food scale and weighed all of my 5-screw games. Still nothing. So I went back to the list and back to the internet, and it seems that the best chance at finding a Famicom-to-NES adapter is obtaining a copy of Stack Up. But the problem with that is I can't find it for less than triple digits. So I looked at the current average value of all the games listed. This list may be outdated by the time you watch this video, but this research convinced me to go for Golf next. I thought about searching online, but then decided I wanted to get my hands on the game before buying it, and I can be a little bit more confident then before buying the game outright. I went to my local game store, and there I found a 5-screw copy of Golf, and that was an enjoyable experience. I've gotten so used to buying games online or buying games from chains and franchises that to walk into a store owned by one guy who is passionate about the product that he sells was really refreshing and surreal. But anyway, I bought Golf, I brought it home, and no adapter. But now I'm on a mission, and I know I can just buy an adapter for like $12, but I want a piece of history, and who doesn't like a good treasure hunt? A week later, my secular work took me close by another used game store, so I decided to swing by and see what they had to offer. A lot of the titles that could contain the adapter were there, but one by one, I eliminated them as possibilities. And then I grabbed Gyromite. Instantly, I felt the difference. This game was heavier than the others. But was I just psyching myself out? A second copy of Gyromite was there, and the Telltale sign for comparison, the purple of the Robot Series logo. The copies that contain the adapter have a deeper purple, and the one I thought felt heavier had the deeper purple than the other copy. For $8, I took a chance, brought it home, and disassembled it to find the prize waiting inside.
There it is. This guy right here. From here down, that's the adapter. This is the game.
Although this cartridge was valued at a measly $8, to me, it's priceless. The presence of this adapter means that this was one of the first ever games to cross the ocean and come to America. A piece of history in my hands. But now it's time to test this piece of history. At the same time I picked up golf, I also grabbed a cheap $3 baseball game for the Famicom. Now, disassembling Famicom games is not the same as disassembling NES games. And don't be fooled by this little circle outline in the label. That's not a screw hole. At least not for the 2 games I've seen. A lesson I learned when I poked a hole in the label of this game.
I'm sorry, little one.
Now this process is a little complicated for me, for one reason. I don't have the top-loading model of the NES. What? If I had that, all I would need to do is separate the adapter, flip around the black part so that the tabs don't get in the way of the Famicom cartridge, and then reassemble and insert into the top of the NES like normal. Since I have the classic front-loading NES, sticking the adapter in there without somehow fastening it to the Famicom game I'm trying to play will almost certainly get the adapter stuck in the system. I could take the NES apart and make a real production out of it, but I settled on taking out the Famicom card, swapping it out with Gyromite, then placing the new game and adapter combo into an NES cartridge, closing it up, and inserting the cartridge into the NES like normal. To do this, I obtained a copy of Final Fantasy III. 1 down, 1 to go. After doing a bit of research, here's one method to open a Famicom cartridge. All I used is a clamp. Now be careful. Attempt to open a Famicom game at your own risk. I tried using a smaller clamp, but it did not provide enough pressure, so I used the bigger one. Get your clamp on the very front of the cartridge, close to the bottom. Make sure it's not crossing over the seam and grabbing the back of the cartridge. Begin to carefully apply the pressure of the clamp to the front of the cartridge. It will begin to bend until one of the clips holding the game together comes loose. You can use a screwdriver to gently pry the other clamp, but I just wiggled it a bit and applied a little more pressure to the cartridge. Once I got the 2 lower tabs facing the sides loose, I took the pressure off the cartridge and then wiggled the upper tabs facing the top loose. Now it's time to swap things out. After loosening the 2 screws holding the adapter, simply slide out the Famicom type card, then insert the Famicom game of your choice. Now here's something to keep in mind. You will want to flip your Famicom game before inserting it into your adapter. So if the chips are facing away from the Famicom label, you will want to insert it in the adapter so that the chips are facing toward the NES label. Now the next obstacle will be the plastic pegs inside the NES cartridge. They're designed to hold their original game, in this case Gyromite, firmly in place. Final Fantasy III does not fit these pegs, so if I want this to fit, I have to break the pegs off. I don't want to do that. Fortunately, I have a cartridge that I bought from someone who sells NES cartridges that were converted into greeting cards. Upon opening it up, I found that not only were there the screw holes for the adapter, but the pegs that would be in my way were already removed. So I closed my new Final Fantasy III to NES combo up and inserted it in my NES. I absolutely loved this little adventure, and I'm really excited to own this simple piece of history. I hope you enjoyed watching, and thanks for listening to An Old Gamer.